Thank you, all of you, and welcome again. I'm so pleased to have you here. We have 4 very different countries represented: Albania, South Africa, India, and Brazil. We have different areas of advocacy represented, but the thing you have in common is your passion. And each of you have fought to get your voices heard and bring changes to your communities and countries. And one of Girl Up's core values is passionate action. And that's what you all bring to your communities, along with your unique insights on how to effectively mobilize for social change. Alisa, I'd like to start with you and would love to hear what motivated you to get involved and to dedicate yourself to advocacy and civic action in Albania.
Since I was a little girl, I've always been the one to take responsibilities and want to do things for the better of the common will. And I've been the rebel one, the child who never compromises with anything. And I'd like to thank my parents who for never shrinking this freedom on me, and is freedom that motivates me. In my opinion, if something affects you, you can never take advantage or leave the responsibility to others. You should take responsibility and contribute to make things better. If something affects someone else in your society, you should act too, because we are social creatures. We form communities, and we have to stand up for each other. That's something that really motivates me, and that's why I have been actively involved in different activities since I was 12.
Thank you so much, Alisa. We know that often change comes from those who are rebels. So thank you for being a rebel. And thank you for pointing out how we are all connected to our community, and what affects someone in our community affects us, and we all need to step up. Brinda, over to you. Was there a particular moment in your life when you realized that change was necessary and that you wanted to be a part of that?
Thank you so much for your question, Sia. I think it would be hard for me to pinpoint one such particular point in my life, but because I was born and brought up in the context of armed conflict in Manipur, and especially because my father is a human rights activist, I've been exposed to many situations and challenges rarely faced by children my age. And so, the news of people getting killed and news of women getting raped, those were, the topics of discussion within the household. And I've always been surrounded by people who are fighting for their rights, people who are demanding justice and peace. So I believe, the idea of bringing about change and being a part of it has always been with me since my childhood, and because of which I have been involved with, social work and other civic engagement work since I was a kid.
Thank you, Brinda. I think it's a great reminder that we are influenced by our environments, we are inspired by the people around us, and it's wonderful to be reminded of that. We know that India has been particularly hit hard by the COVID pandemic, and I was wondering if you could just speak briefly on how your advocacy has been impacted by the pandemic.
Sure. So I, along with my fellow Girl Up Manipur members, we've been actively involved in COVID relief work, be it, helping out the patients directly, giving them the resources they need, like where to get your oxygen cylinders, where to find their ICU beds, all of that. We've been helping out, providing free meals to COVID patients. Currently, we have provided over 700 meals to more than 200 patients in Manipur. And we have also been actively distributing this sanitary pads and other essential items to the community here.
Thank you, Brinda. And we know very well from our own communities that that is life-saving work. So thank you for that work. Anita, heading south to South Africa, How does local change within your own community impact things at the national scale in South Africa and even the global scale? What have you seen in your advocacy?
Thank you, Sia, for that question. Advocacy in the local level is very important for policy making within the national level and even in the global scale. So it's very important for us people who are change makers on the ground to project our voices in national and on the global scale, so we can actively fight for and advocate for our communities and the challenges that are faced by our communities. And I've been very fortunate enough to be engaged in all three levels, on the local scale, on the national, and now even the global scale. So it is very important for us to be present on all of the three spheres, because when I think about it on my local context, in my local context, when I think about the issues that I'm trying to solve, the challenges that I'm trying to fix through various organizations that I've been working with and through various projects that I've been engaged with, it's very important that we be in collaboration with the government. It's very important for us to be in collaboration with national and even international actors to adequately solve and address the issues that are facing us on the ground. Because a change maker like myself who's only 22 years, I only have limited capacity to make, to transform my community. And I definitely need the government to back me up in terms of policy. I definitely need the government to give me manpower in trying to address the issues that are being faced on the ground. For instance, education. I can only provide tutoring service and X, Y, and Z in my capacity, but I need the government in the policy level to address the systematic issues that are present in our communities.
And Anita, in your capacity as a young activist, I know that you work directly with politicians. As you've said, you're engaging with the government. What advice would you have for other young activists to stay confident when working with adults, to insist on your place at the table, to make sure that your voice is heard?
Thank you. So for one, I know for a fact that I suffer a lot from imposter syndrome. And I know I've spoken to a lot of change makers, young change makers like myself, whom also have the same experience where, they are, on the table or provided a seat on the table. They feel intimidated by, the space. So it's very important for you to be very cognizant of the main reason why you're on that table and why you're in that space. You're there to advocate for your community, and you need to do just that. So be very confident in the struggles and the issues that are faced by the people in your community, and try to project those, try to project your voice in those spaces. So you need to be very confident about yourself, and you need to think about it in that sense. You're there to advocate for your community.
That's great advice for activists of all ages, I think. Thank you. And Carolina, I know that in Brazil, you are also working directly with the government and with politicians. What advice do you have for other young activists to make sure that you are heard? And as Anita says, your representation of your community is listened to and responded to?
Definitely. Thank you for that question, Sia. I love the word that Anita used, that was that we need the government for structural change. And I think that I've always asked myself, how do we change in the most efficient way? What's the most effective way that we can cause change? And usually the answer involves the government, it involves policy making. So the advice that I wanted to bring is divided in two parts. The first one is know the issue. You have to know why you're there, as Anita said, but try to know about the issue, try to understand. Most of the politicians, there were many politicians that sometimes we called and they said, yeah, that's not an issue in my city, in my state, that's not a problem here. But when you have the data, when you have the stories, when you know the issue, you know that's a problem, you're able to convince them that, well, menstrual poverty is not just some problem that you made up in your mind. That's a real issue that's affecting girls in your city, in your state. And by knowing and by understanding the issue and understanding a bit of the policy too, like what's the solution that you're proposing, you're able to convince them that that's not just like something that you just made up. This is a real problem. And another thing that I wanted to bring was in terms of the politicians. I think sometimes we don't consider them like normal people, but they are. They literally work for us, and they are just like humans, just like us. So there are many. There's one politician, like especially that helped us a lot in Grow Up. To build this movement, and now she's just like sending stickers in our WhatsApp group, and we're like, oh, so do legislators really send like memes in WhatsApp groups? Yes, they do. And I think that in this way we can find many politicians that they might not be very helpful for us, and they might not be super willing to contribute, but there are many who are, especially women. That's another very important point of the importance of having women in this decision-making spheres. So yeah, just understanding that the politicians, they are there, and they are usually at least curious to understand why like 15-year-old girls are just calling them out of nowhere or emailing them. So they are at least curious, and at most like really supportive, or at least like trying to understand why you're there and why you're talking to them. Yesterday, we have like another bill that was approved here in Brazil, in a city in the south of Brazil, and then the legislator just emailed me like with a huge text saying, hey, I wanted to tell you, because I know that this is an issue that really matters for you girls at Grow Up. So she was really like, when the bill was approved, the first thing she did was like send us an email to let us know. So
that is fantastic. That is wonderful. I love Anita and Carolina. Between the two of you, you've given us tactics for how to engage with politicians. You've reminded us that they work for us and we need to hold them accountable. And you've also reminded us how important it is to be clear about our goals and to be informed about the issues that we're advocating for. So thank you. We also know that social change is hard work, and it can be a slow process sometimes. Alisa, I was wondering if you can say a little bit about how you take care of yourself, how you stay optimistic and inspired to continue the work that you're doing.
Working with people really motivates me because there is always something to learn from others' perspectives. Expressing myself and learning about myself while contributing for something bigger than me really motivates me to do more in my community. If I could give an advice, it would be that share yourself and express your needs. If you need or want to be considered, you should talk for yourself, because no one is you, and it's hard to understand your perspective if you don't share it. So I always have been thinking that world need great minds that are able to express themselves. So self-expression is very important in my opinion.
Thank you so much, Alisa. That's such an important message. And on that note, Brinda, I'm going to give you the final word on what keeps you inspired.
Thank you, Sia. I think it is essential that, just like how Sia just pointed out, Alisa just pointed out, I think it is essential for everyone to understand that there is no one else to speak up for them, but to do it themselves. And it is also essential to understand that we have a long way to go, be it, the fight for gender equality or the fight against racism. We, all of us are young people. We just started out and we have a long way to go. And personally, I think it is very important that we take care of ourselves in this journey and, keep ourselves healthy enough to dismantle the system in the future.
Thank you so much. And thank you to all of you. It's never enough time for these conversations. Thank you for sharing your stories and your insights. Please continue your leadership and your passionate action for all you are doing to create a more just and equitable world. Thank you.